G'day guys and welcome to the Purebred Reds Adelaide United Fan TV FFA Cup Final Preview. I'm here with George Ragias, a huge Adelaide United fan from down the years now. Just to get things going, George, why don't you tell the fans about your first ever experience to do with Adelaide United?
Yeah, so 03-04 season versus Brisbane Strikers at the time, I think they were. First ever home game, was sitting opposite the grandstand.
So round one of the NSL season in 2003.
Of the old NSL season, and they had the pre-game fireworks show.
Yeah.
And at the time, obviously, one of the fireworks had misfired, and it came towards where me and my father were sitting.
Yeah.
And Dad saw the firework come, so his first reaction, he protected me. Fireworks blown up, and then after the game, when we got home, we realised that Dad had holes in the back of his shirt, and I had a hole as well.
Wow.
Club ends up giving us 2 free season tickets for the whole year, so that was my first.
So that was your introduction into Adelaide United, and since then you've remained very loyal. Now I'll just say, personally, obviously as a big fan of this club, there's been moments which have been quite dark in our history, and on a lot of those occasions it's been quite tempting to maybe distance yourself for a period of time from the club, but I would safely say that you've never been one of those people, and you've always remained on board, and that's, I think, very admirable. And yeah, it's great to be able to have you on the show formally for the first time. We did, of course, take a fan cam of you against Sydney FC in round one. Anyway, pressing right along, I'll just explain how we're going to do this. So it's a 2-part preview. For the first part, I'll obviously be talking to my guest George, and we are going to be previewing the final in its natural form. And then the second part of the preview, I'll have a special guest from the UK who played at quite a high level to talk about player psychology, particularly on big occasions like cup finals, which obviously we're going to be delving into Tuesday night. So without further ado, let's get into it. Just to run through some stats, so our overall record against Sydney, it's actually quite good. We've beaten them 19 times. This is across the A-League. We've lost 18 times and drawn 9. We've scored 64 goals against them and conceded 63. Now, here's where things get interesting. When you look at our head-to-head with Sydney in a cup final sense only, so counting A-League Grand Finals and FFA Cup and every other final that both clubs can potentially participate in, we've won 2. Our record's not great against theirs. We've won 2 cup finals that we've been in, and they've won 4. So our 2 were the FFA Cup Final, obviously, in 2014, and the 2015-16 A-League Grand Final, which we could obviously never forget, being our maiden championship. For them, they won the 2005-06 A-League Grand Final, the first ever one. They then beat Victory in 2009-10. That was the fantastic Kevin Muscat penalty miss, which I think we all indulged in without any question. They then beat Victory again in 2016-17, and then they obviously beat us in this very fixture this time last year in the FFA Cup Final of 2017-18. And then when you look at losing cup final records along with theirs, we've lost 4 cup finals that we've been in. So the 2006-7 A-League Grand Final, the 6-0 hammering to Victory, one that we'll obviously never ever forget for all the wrong reasons. Then again to Victory in 2008-09, again in an A-League Grand Final. The 2008 Asian Champions League Final over 2 legs against Gambler Osaka, and the 2017-18 FA Cup Final, like we said, against Sydney. They lost the 2014-15 A-League Grand Final to Victory, and they lost the 2016-17 FFA Cup Final to Melbourne City.
I want to correct you, wasn't the first 06-07 Grand Final 6-1? We scored a goal, didn't we? Nathan Burns at the end?
No, 6-0.
6-0?
Yeah. No, we never scored.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Fire up.
Yeah. I know you'd like to go back and change the result in some way, George, but unfortunately it was 6-0 on the night. Now, this game should definitely sell out. It sold out in 2014. It's obviously Cooper Stadium, which we know well, an intimate boutique ground. It's a cup final.
Yeah.
The FFA run the show when it comes to ticketing, but so I can't give you any information as to how well the tickets have sold so far, but you'd expect naturally that this sells out, wouldn't you?
I mean, you'd think. I mean, we've started off the season with a pretty decent result, so
Yeah.
you'd hope it would be a sellout, especially for the sport and the game. So
And I think, being a cup final, it's not one of those where you just think, oh, I'll sit back and watch on Fox. Like, if you can get yourself to a cup final, it's the atmosphere, the fact that it's historic, you're going to want to get yourself there. And I think it's obviously a big draw card to those families that really sort of and ah every week as to whether they want to go out and watch the Reds. So I see no reason why this shouldn't sell out. Anyway, pressing along, I just want to ask you, just to touch up on how you felt we went against Sydney in round one. So a 1-1 result, obviously, to kick the season off at home. Here we are very soon after that result, again coming up against them at Coopers. How do you think we went on that night recently against Sydney, and what did you take from that game that you'd really sort of hone in on when it comes to preparing for the cup finals?
Well, I mean, when you look at the game, we probably started off with a bit of shock because I honestly thought Sydney were going to press harder.
Yeah.
And then obviously they were really deep. So we obviously came out and they had their chances, but our defence, man, it looked complete.
Pretty solid.
Nothing against Gollum, but Jacobson, man, his touch, his vision, his understanding of the game, man, he just adds that component that I think we've missed.
Yeah.
So I think that was something, and then the goal was just that was just class.
Delightful, wasn't it, from Galloway? There's been a lot made about the fact that Sydney probably didn't bring their A game on the night, and obviously the fact that they were still able to get a point is pretty commendable, given the circumstances. But do you think that we're going to expect Sydney to come out a lot differently this time around, or do you think they'll be measured and they'll still try and negate us as opposed to worrying about themselves and the assets that they've got?
Well, I think they're a very strong defensive team. I think they're great on the counter.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, I think they should probably come out pressing harder.
Yeah.
But it comes down to how Corica, goes to line up. Is a bit. You can see the difference between him and Arnold. I mean, automatically. I mean, Arnold against us last year, he knew that he had a chance to win. So they came out, they pressed high.
They did. I recall the first game that we had against them last season at home. We lost 1-0. We actually didn't play too badly on that night. But generally against Sydney last season, I don't think we can say we had the better of it in terms of performance.
Except that 1-1 draw, man.
Yeah.
Was it 1-1?
I think possibly.
But that draw, and you know what I love, man, when Kurz's emotion after
it was 0-0.
That's it, because we had the young team.
We had essentially it was the youth team. Yeah.
So look, this game's going to be interesting. I mean, taken from the first round, I think we've got a chance. Yeah, really.
I want to ask you how you'd line up. So would you change much from? We're assuming at the time of filming that everyone's fit, including Bubba, who was obviously Bubba Diawara, our number 9, who was ruled out in the lead up to the season opener. Would you change things up at all in terms of formation, in terms of player selection? How would you go about it?
I think I trust Kurz with the lineup, with the same formation.
Yeah.
The one thing I would do is Maroney for me right now. Given last season, I think he's come back from injury. I don't know whether it's changed his concept or his mindset, but I would drop him.
Yep.
Put Strain at right back.
Okay.
I think he had a strong season last year. Put Haller in right wing. And then put Bubba up front.
I think Strain certainly had a very good year. It was a breakout season.
Beautiful.
But I think towards the end, he might have maybe just run out a bit of steam, a little bit of steam. I think personally, Michael Maroney is very reliable. Yeah. And I didn't see anything wrong with how he played in round 1. So personally, I'd still stick with Maroney. But you're saying, other than that, you'd keep things pretty much how Kurz had him?
I think Halloran obviously looked not out of position, but he did look really, in a sense, comfortable. It took him a little bit of time, and then when he got settled being up front, he was quite a threat, man. I think his movement was good. So, you know what, if Bubba comes back, I think we'll put Halloran right wing, because I think that'd be his natural position. And Goodwin, Halloran and Bubba up front, it's a big difference to last year, man.
So you'd keep the 4-3-3?
Definitely. I trust Kurz with the way I like the way Kurz plays. I like his style. I just like the way we play.
Yep.
I like our culture this year. We don't give up, man.
Yeah.
And you can see.
And that's really something that Marco Kurz has brought in, isn't it?
Definitely, man.
It's discipline.
I mean, when you look at Amour's first year to his, his last
second year, yeah.
And then you've got a Spanish system, and then when Kurz came in, you didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
But he brought in that German,
the hard man. Yeah.
So it's pleasant. It's pleasant.
I think one thing, look, we don't know for sure that he's like, a tactical genius.
No.
But I think one thing that you can 100% definitely say about him is that the players play for him, don't they? And you can just tell that under Kurz over nearly 2 years now, there's no question that the players all have that same mentality of we've got to run through walls for him, and even when we're up against it, we've just got to play to the final whistle and throw everything we've got at the opposition. Now you got to say, as pretty as the football was at times under Gombau and Amour, was that the case that we had that extra set of sort of hunger and motivation?
I think the second year with Amour, teams figured us out.
Yeah.
I think the first year with Gombau, obviously he had a different philosophy in terms of type of player than Amour, but I think teams after that double, that to me that's a Leicester City for us.
Yeah.
That style of football, man, teams figured it out. And obviously there was hierarchical problems with the club.
Yeah.
We all knew that. And then Kurz comes in. And then you talk about how Kurz and the players play for him. If you remember last year, Diarra got dropped.
Yeah.
Because of his attitude. And look at this year, man, he's stuck with him.
Yeah.
And I think we've got figured out more so. And I think the change of system as well kind of suited us. I think we needed it.
Yeah.
Because I think we do go through phases with different coaches and styles. I think we needed that. And I think even this year, it's not going to be a style that we can figure out, because I think it's more so we just run.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Anyway, we don't want to get too historical. I just want to ask you quickly, there was a lot said about the fact that when we played Sydney in round one, it wasn't a particularly great game. Both sides took a while to sort of feel each other out, and it was never really open. Now, you'd expect in a cup final, it could be cagey to begin with for sure, but you'd also expect that both sides are going to have learnt plenty from that round one encounter. So what I pose to you is, if you're Marco Kurz, and let's say for instance the same thing happens which happened in the lead up to round one, Baba Diawara suddenly has soreness, which is apparently too much to press ahead with putting him in the team selection, so he was dropped I think under 2 hours prior to kickoff, and he goes with Ben Halloran as a striker. Let's say that exact thing happens again. Would you this time round, considering that Sydney have a very, very dynamic midfield, perhaps maybe go a little more defensive, or try coming out of the blocks, scoring early, and then maybe changing to a 4-2-3-1, going a little bit defensive, having two holders, and just letting Ben Halloran run amok on his own up front?
I think we
just sort of choking the midfield.
I think we should do what we kind of did the first round, the first half. We did the first round. I think we kind of baited them, and I think the chances will flow more in the cup final, because at the end of the day, it's not a league game.
Yeah.
So I think we should probably stick to that.
Yeah.
And then I think we should obviously try and go to the end, because I think we're fitter than them.
Yeah.
So I think for us it would be better if it goes longer for them to try and push. But the other thing is, will we concede? So I mean, I'd do the same thing that he's done in terms of his tactics, but probably come up with something up front if we are lacking.
Yeah. So maybe don't persist with Halloran again.
I mean, you could.
Yeah.
You could persist with him, or give maybe Ilso a chance up front.
Yeah.
Let him try and come on, and maybe earlier than what he did last time.
Yeah, for sure.
Depending on how the game goes, really, man.
Of course. I guess I just have this feeling that I don't think Sydney are going to come out and do the exact same thing they did in round one, and I think it would be foolish for them to expect us to do the exact same thing that we did in round one. So maybe that's why I'm feeling a little bit like if you're Marco Kurz, you might want to have one or two things up your sleeve, but nevertheless, that's for him to know and no one else right now. So moving into key players on the day, and I understand for you it's a battle of the midfield.
Oh yeah, Essayas for me is one of the best players we've produced.
Yeah.
And I think him in general commands the midfield. And I think if we can win that midfield battle, we'll be having more chances to possibly score more, or probably create more chances, because our play does rely through our midfield.
So for
Sydney, definitely De Jong.
Yeah.
I think his first game was very slow.
Yeah,
it wasn't the standard.
No, he didn't stand out at all.
No,
yeah,
but
he was criticised for it too.
They'll probably come out, and at High Marsh as well, and it is kind of our fortress. I think they'll come out and they will want the win. They'll be hungry, man.
Yeah. Just on that, it hasn't really been much of a fortress for a while, to be honest.
It hasn't, but you do go to High Marsh, and the thing is, even though you do kind of hope for the win, you do expect it, even though things might be different. I expect the win at High Marsh.
I was talking to some Sydney FC fans on the tram after round one, and they were saying to me that they found our ground, Cooper Stadium, to be one of the most intimidating in the league, just because of how packed in you are and how close you are to other fans. You go to other stadiums, they sort of get boxed away in a corner. Different kind of feeling at Cooper Stadium. The action was right there. The intensity of it right in their face. So they made that remark to me, which I found interesting because, usually you think about the grounds that pack 40, 50,000 in them, and you think those are going to be the ones that really sort of make your legs turn to jelly as players, and as fans definitely sort of make you worried about how you're going to make a quick exit, things like that. But yeah, they had those comments to make, which I found interesting. With Ragias, just going back to the fact that you think he's going to be our key player on the night, his role's changed a little bit this season, so he's gone from the number 8 to the number 6 now. Yep. Do you still think that, people are well aware of him now as the captain of the club. He's been one of the best imports to ever come to the league.
Definitely.
Is there still a sense that his actual work rate off the ball is really underappreciated? And maybe not so much by United fans, but other A-League fans?
I think it is very underappreciated because if you watch him specifically for 10 minutes of the game, his movement off the ball, he's able to read what's going to happen next, 2, 3 steps in front. And I think that is one of the most important things, especially for a player like him who's capable of going from 8 to 6.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as an import, especially of that quality, especially when you've got a DM as a centre midfield, as one of your highest imports, you expect that quality.
Yeah, of course.
And he produces it. And then
week in, week out.
His silky touch as well, man.
Yeah.
You don't know what to expect from him sometimes, but you know that he's going to play well.
And also, on the other hand, when he's running onto balls in space, ahead of opposition midfielders, and it's just sort of him and centre backs, you can just tell that the game's going to open up in some way, can't you? So he's really that kind of 360 player.
Yeah, he is
for us. So.
He's very creative as well. That's the main thing.
So I think it's a really good shout. Ragias is probably the key player for us on the night. A lot of talk about Lefondra's goal, the fact that he popped up after having done nothing, and that he has that in his locker generally. He's going to be that sort of menacing player who can just bob up out of nowhere and really sort of change the game after being absent. Is that something that we really have to worry about again, or do you think Elsie and Jakobsen are going to do their homework?
I think for him, he needs to find his feet in the A-League.
Yeah.
And for us, especially with the FFA Cup being so early, it goes in our favour.
Yeah.
Because the A-League is a different kettle of fish. So I think he's capable of coming up like that. And that's something that you can see in him, obviously, from that goal. So I think it is a concern for us, and it is a threat. But I think if we can control him with Elsie and Jakobsen, like you've mentioned, I think they will be able to control him for now. But as the season goes on, man, I feel sorry for other clubs that come up, especially when we come up against Sydney next.
You think he's a sound replacement for Bobo?
Definitely, man.
Yeah.
He needs to find his feet. Like every import that comes in, majority of them don't find their feet straight away.
Yeah. So, well said. I agree 100%. Getting into our last segment, which is simply your final prediction. What's going to happen?
I think it'll be a very tight game.
Yep.
I think we can win this 1-0.
1-0?
I think we can, but I do have a feeling that this game will go to extra time.
I'm going 2-2 and us to win on penalties. So a reverse of last year.
Reverse. I hope there's no controversy on last year as well, man.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, George, thanks so much for coming on and enjoy the game.
Thanks for having me, man. I
Cheers.
appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.
No worries.
G'day, guys, and welcome to part 2 of the FFA Cup Final Preview. I'm here with a very special guest whose origin is from the United Kingdom, where he comes from in London. It's Johnny Moore, who I'm with, and I'm here to discuss player psychology with him, particularly when it comes to big game occasions. Now, Johnny, You played for Enfield Town in London against Tottenham Hotspurs in 2011. Club you obviously support as well. This is very significant because you played against a number of high-profile players who weren't particularly as well known then as they are now, but nevertheless you played against them. Those very players, just to list them: Jake Livermore, Andros Townsend, a certain Massimo Luongo, who is one of Australia's best players right now in the Socceroos setup, and last but not least, he was a bit of an unknown back then, but certainly isn't now, one of the genuine superstars of football globally, Harry Kane, the England captain. How was it?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to the interview. It's great to be here and great to talk about basically the memories that I've created from my football career. I've still got the programme here of the friendly game, so obviously bring back some lovely memories. It was the opening of our new stadium at Enfield, so we had a big crowd gathering, really good atmosphere at the game. It was just great to be out there on the pitch with the likes of some of these big sort of nine players that you've mentioned. I think all of our team were really excited to just go out there, play our game, and really see what the opposition were like. No one played with any fear.
Yeah.
And it was really good to just be out there on a lovely evening game with under floodlights.
Yeah. I just want to quickly point out, first of all, what was amazing about this particular night is that Enfield Town won, whilst you were up against Tim Sherwood, the opposition manager. And secondly, you speak so nonchalantly about it. Like, unless someone sort of meets you and gets to know you after a period of time and then raises the topic, particularly in a certain time, you're never just going to bring it up. And as a Spurs fan, I just find that kind of weird that you played against, obviously, Spurs when they had, significantly good players playing. It wasn't one of these sort of, an under-19s or something like that. You played against genuine stars of today, and yet you just don't really bring it up.
Well, it's probably something that I've probably just kept under wraps, and unless people inquire about it, I probably don't speak too in depth about it. But like you said, it's something probably to speak highly of. In regards, I've learnt a lot from probably going up against these players, and then to look where their careers have taken them. They did bring a fairly strong squad down to play against us, and just to actually see them on the pitch, passing and moving the ball. They had a lot of possession, but like you said, sometimes the stats don't always go in the favour of the result, and we came out on top of the day, which all of us probably raised our game that little bit more against an opposition. A bit like a cup game, you always tend to raise your game and the standards, and anything can happen on that match day. And I think they were obviously, once the final whistle went, Tim Sherwood and Les Fernand, the joint managers on the night, pretty much just took the team and shot off and didn't really stay around the game. So I think they were taken by surprise and didn't expect the performance that we put in, and definitely probably not the result.
Just want to quickly let you guys enjoy a bit of a photo gallery which has Johnny playing in that very game. So some fantastic images there, Johnny, and I'm sure some great memories that you'll hold with you for eternity, for all of time. Now, since you've been in Australia, we'll touch a little bit later on your experiences in the past playing in Australia, but you're currently a free agent, having most recently played in State 1 with Noarlunga United. Like I say, on the hunt for a new club for the 2019 season. Just going to ask you some quick fire questions. So first of all, how do elite players prepare for big games mentally?
For big games, I think you generally tend to go through the same ritual. Well, I do it myself. I try not to change anything, try not to change my routine. Do everything like I normally would with meals, get into a good night's sleep, and try not to have any kind of nerves in my head Each player is different, but I tend to just focus on it's another game and just go out on the pitch and just perform to my best abilities.
Interesting. So what's the lead up like for professionals when it comes to cup finals specifically?
I think, like I said, some of it's dependent on the age of the player. I think some of the younger players, and you notice it when you've been in dressing rooms and stuff like that, you can tell there's nerves in them. And for me, one of the more experienced players these days, you try and settle some of their nerves and just say, if they're an attacking player, just say, right, get out your opponent.
Yeah.
Be positive in possession. And for the other sort of, I guess the sort of middle-aged players, I think they just generally sort of the mental side of things is if it's their first experience of a cup final, like I said, they'll probably have excitement. Definitely any player that wants to play a cup final, if you get lucky enough to get in one, you really just want to go out there and enjoy the day. Look, everyone's going to make mistakes on the day, but it's how quickly you can sort of, I guess some of those sort of little niggles out of the game and just concentrate on performing to your best standards, like I spoke about, and really just collectively as a team, the teamwork and the consistency to get over the line really. But look, the atmosphere on the day generally is something that just builds up, and it's just the excitement and the emotion of the atmosphere that will just be something to look forward to.
You obviously touched on the fact that there's young players in and around the squad a lot of the time that you find yourself in an occasion like this. How, obviously you're a young player once upon a time, how easy or how difficult is it to block out the nerves when you know that you're going to be in a game that people are going to remember for a long time? It's a game where there's heaps on the line. It's a one-off game. You're playing for silverware. When it comes to blocking out the nerves, do you find it difficult, or run of the mill kind of preparation for you to just get in there and focus on the football?
Well, for me these days, it's just the run of the mill. Just go about my business and get the job done. Probably previous years that I played in cup finals, sometimes it would be a case of music would motivate me and something like that to block out what was going on around. Everyone has their own rituals. I've been in dressing rooms where other people have been preferring having music on the stereo blaring out, other people with their headphones. I've had guys that have been religious and praying before games. So you really get different characters and different rituals of how they go out about it. For me, it's a case of just really try not to get to the game too early. I like to sort of go straight to the game, maybe look at the pitch, speak to your teammates, then get straight in the dressing room, get out and do the warm-up and then straight into the game. I find the more time you're twiddling your thumbs and dwelling, it can play a huge factor in terms of getting a little bit more nervous of the occasion rather than it needs to be.
So your system is just sort of go through the motions, and you can only, your own performance you're in control of, and if it's a case of the team collectively underachieving on the day or the night, then you just hold your head up high as best you can and say, I did my part.
I tend to treat the same as any old game and try and focus on going, right, it's the same performance, play to my best abilities, and like you said, if it's good enough on the day, collectively, individually, but as a team, then you'll get yourselves over the line. If not, if you get beaten by the other side, you can hold your hands up and say you gave it everything you could, and you look yourself in the mirror at the end of the game and say, look, I did what I could.
Just to finish off the interview, I want to ask you, you've been following Adelaide United on an on and off basis, but you're relatively up to date with how the current squad looks, and you've seen a fair few games over last season as well as this season as well. So I just want to ask you quickly, you'll be at the cup final on Tuesday night against Sydney FC. What do you think is going to happen?
Definitely be there on Tuesday night. Really looking forward to the cup final. I think it'll be pretty evenly matched. Obviously, they've only recently played each other round one of the league. So it obviously gives a good account for each manager and the players to size each other up. I think going into the cup final, there may be a few changes. And looking at Adelaide's performance tonight against Newcastle, I think they obviously need to go at the opposition a little bit more, especially being at home. You want the fans behind you, and it's a great crowd with the Reds when the team are going forwards. But they just need to be a little bit more positive and penetrate the opposition. And once you get the crowd going, it can really change things. I saw tonight, once they got back on level terms, it really changed the atmosphere. But look, it'll be a very evenly matched team after last season's performance of Sydney being pretty dominant. Look, it's going to be a tough one for Adelaide to win, but look, as cup finals go, anything can happen. An early goal can change the game if Adelaide take the lead, or a sending off, and you never know what will happen. But look, I think it's going to be a really enjoyable game to go and watch. Hopefully we can see as many people there. I know it's going to be a packed out stadium, and hopefully a really entertaining performance. And look, you want both sides to play well, but hopefully Adelaide's come out on top and can win.
Final score, what's it going to be?
I'm actually going to go with Adelaide United on penalties.
Wow,
for the win.
That's my prediction as well. Hopefully it's a really expansive game that goes into extra time and keeps everyone on the edge of their seat. Johnny, it's been great having you here. We wish you all the best in whatever your future endeavours are on the football scene and out of it. And once again, thanks for making yourself available to us on the Purebred Reds Adelaide United Fan TV.
Thank you, been a pleasure.
Cheers,
Thank you.
mate. Thanks.
Cheers.